Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I do have my disclaimer. The views of the guest that you hear in this interview may not represent those of the station or the host. I am so thrilled to have with me today Doug Stubbleton, who is on for the third time, so I guess he must like coming on my show. And
Yeah.
I'm honored to have Doug on. He is multi-talented. He is co-author with Reinhard Donka of the Hollywood Time Travel Series, It's a Wonderful Time, which is, and Doug will explain, takes place, it goes like in a time travel to the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And if you've been living under a rock, it's a classic movie. It's going to be 75 years old, and it's just a classic holiday movie that makes you feel good. And Doug is also the owner of Iron Mike Entertainment, which owns a catalog of songs licensed to film and television studios. And Doug is also a film producer and director who has the documentary, The Mother of Normandy. And folks, Doug was on, I think, back in April or May on my show about the Mother of Normandy, the story of Madame Simone Renaud, who was in a, let me see, what's the town, Doug? Saint Marie.
Saint Mary Glisse. Saint Mary Glisse.
That's it. Saint Mary Glisse. Thank you. Folks, you have got to see this documentary. The book, I'm telling you, it is heart-touching. What this town was so, the people of the town were so grateful to the American soldiers and the other soldiers that came in and freed them from the Nazis. And we should never forget our veterans. And that's one thing, Doug, I really admire you for remembering the veterans and letting us not forget about history. And I want to welcome you, Doug Stapleton, back to Chatting with Betsy.
Hi, Betsy. It's great to be back on your show. Thanks for having me back again. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you are welcome. Folks, I just have to say, last year, I think around the same time, Doug, you had written the book, It's a Wonderful Time, about the time traveler, Evan West. And
that's right.
Now you have it in an audio book. But I'm going to ask you, for people who've never listened before to Chatting with Betsy, what motivated you to write such a fascinating book with it's a great story.
Well, great. Yeah, thanks for all the nice, kind words you said there at the start. I appreciate that. And, regarding the book, It's Wonderful Time, it's basically, I had the idea back in 1993 and wrote it into a script, a movie script, with a friend of mine who had written a lot of scripts named George Saunders, and we wrote the script and then tried to get it made in Hollywood, but didn't get it made. Always got good responses from it, but just wasn't what people were looking for at the time. But anyway, so a couple years ago, actually about 3 years ago, decided to make it into a movie, into a book rather than a movie, which is a lot less expensive. And so educated myself of about a year, I guess, watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading books and hearing people, what it takes to write a book. And did that process, and it came out October of last year. So it's been a year and a couple months now, and it was well received when it came out. Basically, in a nutshell, the book is about a time traveler from 2021. He doesn't know he's a time traveler till something happens, but he's a movie trailer editor working in Hollywood, and through a situation where he gets in a car wreck and a big portal opens up right by outside of Hollywood on the 101 freeway, and he goes back to 1946 Hollywood during the making of the movie It's a Wonderful Time. And so that's kind of the gist of it, and it's a fun, but people ask what it's about, how I would describe it, and I usually say it's Back to the Future meets Midnight in Paris, which was a Woody Allen film on the set of It's a Wonderful Life. And so that's kind of, it's in the tone of Back to the Future, and it's fun. fun, and we have Jimmy Stewart in it, and Frank Capra and Donna Reed, and it's you get a chance to see what it would have been like to be on that set and the things that happen during the movie. And there's other things that happen, but that's kind of the gist of the story.
Well, I have to say, and I know I said this last year, but the movie itself, It's a Wonderful Life, has a special place in my heart because I never saw the movie till after I met my husband. I think we were married when I first saw the movie. So I didn't see this movie till like probably 81. Wow. And we always watched it every year. And I cry when I watch it now because it brings back such a special memory. My husband loved that movie, and I often wondered myself, and maybe we do all wonder what life would have been like for others if we weren't born. What effect did we have on other people?
Yeah, it's an amazing premise, isn't it, when you think about it? And that movie did such a good job of portraying that because, without George Bailey in the world, he affected so many people's lives in a good way. And, it's an amazing story and premise.
Yes, and I have to say this to the audience. You know what? We never know how our ripples travel, how far our ripples travel, whether we do good things or we do not so good things, how it affects people. And it does. What we do affects people. And hopefully we put out good ripples out there. And you certainly are, Doug Stapleton, putting out wonderful ripples out there. And you made this book into an audio. And I never had an author on to tell the audience, what's the process of that? It's got to be quite involved, to say the least.
Yeah, I learned a lot. Believe me, doing it. It's the audiobook version of the printed ebook version of It's a Wonderful Time, which came out, as I said, in October of last year. But so last year when I knew the book was going to be coming out in October, I would say like around June or July, I had already started looking for a place to produce the book for me, a company and a person to do that. So I had was just kind of looking around, and I talked to a friend of mine, Jeff Levin, who is a composer for films and stuff, and he has a studio, and I gave him a call to see if he would be open to, recording it there, as he'd done that before, and he hadn't done it. He said he could probably do it, but he said my timing was good because he just got off the phone a few days before with a fellow friend of his, a musician, who just finished an audiobook. He wrote a self-help book, and he said he was really raving about the guy that produced his audiobook. So I said, wow, can you give me his name and number so I can call him to see if I can get the name of the guy that did his audiobook? So I called his name was John. I called him, and he gave me the name of a guy named Elias, who has a company called E-Audio Productions out of Virginia. And so I called Elias and told him what I was doing, and I really liked him right off the bat. And I'm a musician, so he was a musician, so we were both fellow musicians. I could tell he knew what he was doing, and I went to his website also and listened to some of the books that he'd done in the past, and really great quality. So I didn't feel like I had to look any further, and the amount he was charging for what he did was really reasonable, and so I hired him, and so we started that process. I had to get the book done first, get it out. From my research, they say it's good to maybe let 2 or 3 months go by until you release the audiobook, so the print book and the ebook has a chance to kind of make some sales and get its legs, and then a new version of that book is available. So I was thinking maybe December or January was when I would release it. And so that was the plan. I brought him on board, and then we ended up not releasing it till just recently, like in September of this year. We just had a few setbacks. They weren't any bad things, but the guy that I got to be the narrator, his name was Joshua Manning, did an amazing job, but he got COVID at one point, so we had to kind of put a halt on that. And I don't know, it was just a process. Usually it doesn't take that long, but I was in no hurry to get it done. Whereas I had to get the book done before Christmas time because It's Wonderful Life, dealt with it's not a Christmas movie, but it takes place during Christmas. So I really had a deadline for that. But the audiobook it didn't matter if I got it done in 3 months, 6 months, or even 9 months. So we took our time, and Elias said it was one of the best books he's ever done. So every time he needed to do something a little better to make it better in the recording, I mean in the the mixing and the editing and the EQing, I just said take your time, do what you need to do. So it was an amazing process. I learned a lot, and I mean I can dig down even deeper if you want, but I found the right place. There's a lot of places out there, but I highly recommend eAudio Productions because I was just so happy with the final outcome.
And I have to ask you this, Doug. I mean, what I heard of from the link that you sent me, it's awesome. Like it kind of reminds me of maybe they use the same process when someone is doing one of those animated cartoons, but the book is not a cartoon, but they're in the studio, they're not, are they, as one person is recording, there's no one else around. So each person is recording separately.
Yeah, well, that is correct. In my case, a lot of audiobooks are just done by one person, a narrator, whether it's a female narrator or a male narrator, and that works fine. But in my case, I had a lot of characters, and so I ended up finding Joshua on Elias's website. He has a roster of different male narrators and also female narrators. So I found Joshua. Heard his voice, and as soon as I heard a voice, I said, that's the voice. He kind of sounded like Mike Rowe, the guy that does that, used to have that show called Dirty Jobs, kind of has a...
Yes.
Yeah, so I like that guy's voice. Anyway, so that's how I found Joshua, and then for the guy, there was a guy named Coop, a character, so I ended up getting another one of Elias's guys on a roster for that voice. And then I needed a female voice, and I didn't find any females that really fit because the girl is 23 years old, but she also had to do some older voices. And so I went out. You don't have to use Elias's people; he makes them available, but you can hire anybody. You don't have to be exclusively to his people on his roster. And so I used 2 people from his roster, but for the female, I went on Google and I just typed in top female book narrators, and I literally found a girl who was a narrator herself, and she gave a list of her top 5 favorite narrators. And out of 5 of them, 4 of them were male narrators, and 1 was a female, and she was like number 3 on her list. So her name was Susie Jackson, and when she was just so excited about Susie Jackson. She's so good, and she does this, and her inflections and everything is great. And I was sold just by hearing her describe her. So I went and did a little research, and I found Susie. And first I just found her talking on an audio, on a video, talking about like the latest book she had done, and she was talking in her own voice, not as a character or anything, and talking about how she would read the book to her kids at night when she gets home. And as soon as I heard her voice talking, I said, her name is Dorothy, who's my main character in my book. And I thought, that's the voice I'm looking for. So I ended up getting in touch with Susie and told her what the book's about, and she came on board, and I hired her separately from what I had paid Elias for everything else. So you have to do you have to kind of if you're writing your book, after you've written it and getting it done and marketing it, and then once you do the audiobook, you got to take off your writer hat and you got to put on your producer/casting hat. And who better to pick the voice for your character or characters than the writer, right? Because it's all in their head; they know exactly who should sound like what. So you as the writer, you can work with the person that's producing the book, but you have to, got to be proactive and go out and listen and do stuff. And I even sent a couple pages of copy to some of the females on Elias's roster, and they read copy for me so I could hear. And they were all good, but they just didn't have the voice I was looking for. And like I said, when you hear it, you'll know. And in the case of Susie, I heard her voice, and I just knew. So there's a lot of work involved in the casting, but it's very, very important because, once the book's done, it's done, right? And once it's out there, you can't really go back and change it. You don't want to go back and change it probably. So, if there's any other questions regarding that, but that's part of the process, yes, finding the right voices to the right voice or voices. And I wanted to kind of do it since it was old 40s stuff, you know. You remember those old radio shows? I wanted to have a little variety when it came to the voices. So Susie did all the female voices, and Joshua did the narration, the main narration, and all the male voices except the other lead character whose name was Coop, and that guy just did that voice.
That's interesting because I always wondered about that with the audio book. How does the writer, you know, find the voices? I would picture you would have to interview them. You know, they would have to audition so you could hear their voice. And I would think that doing an audio book is quite costly compared to writing the book.
Yeah, I can give you an idea of the prices, and actually to answer your question from before is you were right that you know so Joshua and Susie and Fintress never met each other. They all did it in their own studios. You know, they did their parts, and then all those they come in as a raw wave file, which is not an MP3 but a wave, which is the best quality. And then Elias produced the book, and he did the editing and put all the lines where they're supposed to be, one after the other. You know, he was going through the book and put all the lines there, and then he would do the mixing and the EQ. And just getting it all right, all that stuff, but they never met each other. Yeah, I mean, Joshua actually lives in Edinburgh, Scotland. He's actually he's actually an English guy whose mother was, I believe, from New York, and his father's English, but he from England, but he lives in Edinburgh, so he has a British accent, but he does a really good American voice, and it just was perfect for what I wanted. But yeah, he did it at his own time. He sent in his stuff. Susie sent in the stuff to me. I got it over to Elias, and same thing with Fintress Moore. And then he puts it all. He has to edit it all together, and then I had to listen to the book. I mean, you think, oh, that's it, right? No, you got to go through. I had to listen to that thing 3 more times from chapter 1 all the way to the end to make sure that there's people they pronunciate words wrong. You gotta make all these notes and send it back and say, okay, there was Marlboro cigarettes. Joshua said like Marlboro or something like this English version. That's not right. So just little nitpicky things, but you got to get all that right. And then sometimes you might think you got everything, but maybe they missed a sentence by accident, so you got to go back and get that. They're called pickups, and so it's quite a process. But when it's all done, a guy like Elias or the producer, puts it all together, and then I got to go listen to the whole thing over again just to make sure everything is right. And I finally give it a thumbs up, and then we distribute it and get it out and put it out to Audible and Chirp and Kobo and all these different places. But to answer your question, sorry, I wanted to clarify. Yeah, they do it all in different their own studios at different times. But to do it with Elias, the package that I bought from him was it was a very reasonable package. It was I believe $2,300, and that covered all the production of the book, and it included one narrator. And if I wanted to add a second narrator or a second person to do voices, it was only $300 more. So it would have been around $2,500. So that's really inexpensive.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. And then in my case, I ended up hiring Susie outside of that deal, which I paid separate for her. So, but $2,500. People should write that down. I mean, when I told people, they said, "Wow, I was expecting it to be way more, like $5 or $6 or $7 grand." Now you can pay that much at places. Certainly you can. That's definitely an amount that could be paid, but I just felt Elias's cost was very reasonable, and I was very happy with the outcome, the final outcome. So, yeah,
it's flawless, Doug. I mean, what I heard, it's so smooth, and the voices. I mean, it's just was great to listen. I never heard an audio book. So this was the first one.
They're pretty cool. A lot of people, audiobooks audiobooks every year continue to go up and up and up in popularity. More and more people are listening to them when they're working out, when they're driving on trips, when they're running and walking. Every year it goes up. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but it just goes up every year, like 5 to 10% or something like that. I mean, it's pretty impressive, and more people are doing so. If you do a book, a printed book with an ebook, it is definitely something to consider to put it on audiobook, because it's another way to make revenue. A lot of people don't like to read print books, tangible books, or they don't like to read on their their Kindle. They want to actually hear it. So there is a big audience out there that love to listen, and they will buy audiobooks, or they can rent them. You can also get them distributed through the library system. They're always looking for books to make available. So there's a lot of different avenues, and it's another revenue stream that as an author or publisher should consider.
Yes, we have a choice now, of how we want to, I would say, read a book. Either you could listen to the book, or you could put it on Kindle or computer, or do it the old-fashioned way like I do it and hold it in my hand.
Yeah, that's what I like that better too. The old-fashioned
and
way,
read it.
From old school.
And I just think it's fascinating. What also fascinates me, Doug, and I'm going to ask you, because I love to read, and since a child I love to read, and it always fascinated me, how does a writer get these characters in their head and the dialogue and the background? That just fascinates me. I might sound like I'm a little cuckoo, but I find it fascinating.
Well, that's where the good old imagination comes in. You just have to let your imagination kind of go, and and if you're writing, you just you're writing, and you just, I don't know, it's kind of strange. You just have to think about it. Where would I want this to go, and who do they meet? What's their name going to be? It's just, I don't know if there's a way to just do it. I don't know if there's a formula. You know what I'm saying? You just have to You just have to go and write and let your imagination go, and some things work at the start, and some things have to be changed. But I just tell people you got to just get it down. Get it down on paper or in your computer, the Word doc, and just start going, and then you can just keep refining it as you go and go back and change. But dialogue, I mean, that's an important part. The story is very important. Not everybody can do it, but there's a lot of great writers out there. So
yes, that's what fascinates me about writing a book. People who do write books, like I always wondered, do they have the characters already in their head, or they do it as they go along, especially the dialogue? Like, did you have that dialogue down in your mind before you wrote the book, or as you're writing the book?
Well, when I first came up with the idea, I had just an idea of a guy getting chased out of Hollywood and hits a telephone pole, and it's during a rainy, stormy night, and he's carrying something that somebody's after, and he goes down this pedestrian walkway, and the poles fall down at the same time and hit these railings, electricity, and then a lightning bolt comes down, and he goes through a time warp. So that's kind of all that I had. And then he came up in 1940s Hollywood. So that's all I had as the idea. And then when I got back to my office, I started writing it out on some paper. I didn't know what his name was. I didn't know why he was getting chased. I didn't know all the important things, but I just kind of started put the basics down. But then when I started writing a treatment for it, then I started coming up with some dialogue and some other characters and started naming them. And then when it came to writing the script, then I brought George in, who'd co-wrote the script with me, but he'd written about 20 other scripts. That was my first script. He'd written 20 before, and they were all made into movies. So he was a seasoned veteran. So he did a lot of the heavy lifting, but we worked very closely on the dialogue and different scenes and stuff. So I think I think it could happen two ways. You could do it like I did it, like piece by piece, or some people probably just sit down and their fingers just go, and their imagination, they have names already and everything. They just, they already have it in their head, I guess, and it comes out. But I think through the process, there's always changes being made,
Yeah, I really admire that creativity to do something, like that. And you must have really liked the movie It's a Wonderful Life to have that as a part. I mean, that's a main part in your in your book.
Yeah. It's
so
a big,
you must have really liked that movie.
I love that movie. Yeah, that's the reason. Well, when I had the guy going to the 40s, I didn't really know what year, and then when I decided I need to pick a year, I picked 1946 because I knew that was the year they made It's a Wonderful Life during the summer. I think it was like April to July, but that was my favorite movie. And so I just thought, well, if I was going to go back, that'd be a great year to go back. Also, it was the year after, year after the war, World War II had just ended, so a lot of the service guys were coming back also. So I thought that'd be an interesting time, Hollywood after the war. But mainly it was because, It's a Wonderful Life, just my favorite film, and a great film. It's rated the number one inspirational film of all time by the American Film Institute. So it's just a really, a lot of people's favorite movie because of just, what it's about, and, it has a great ending and stuff. And like you said earlier, it's an interesting premise about what would it like to be if you were never born, what would the world be like. So, so that's why. And you had mentioned earlier being the 75th anniversary. That is correct. It actually came out a year ago around this time. The premiere of it was at the Globe Theater in New York, but the actual initial release was actually in January of '47. So right now we're literally celebrating the 75th anniversary this whole year up to next January. It's coming January, next month basically. But so that's kind of interesting. And when I wrote the book, it happened to be that 2021 would have been the 75th anniversary, so that was part of the story. So, but that's it. It's one of my favorite movies, and we just wanted to have a fun time with it. Jimmy Stewart's one of my favorite actors. Frank Capra is one of my favorite directors. So it's got a lot of great things going for it. So. Yes,
I loved watching James Stewart, and the film. It's pretty ironic, though, Doug. When the film came out, it wasn't a big hit, but it became a big hit later on.
Yeah, I can tell you a story very quickly. When it came out in January, there was a big snowstorm on the East Coast. It lasted for about a week. So the weekend, a lot of people didn't go out, so the box office numbers were really low. And then even the following days, people didn't go out. It was like it was so cold on the East Coast, they just didn't go out. So it didn't make a lot of money when it was in the box office numbers. And then, back then, they didn't have all the things we have now, VHS and DVDs and streaming networks and all that stuff. There was only, the main TV networks, but they were still pretty young. So just after about a month or so, got put on the shelves back at the studios. In this case, it was RKO. And then it just kind of sat, and nobody ever talked about it. It got mixed reviews. Overall, it got good reviews, but a few bad reviews, but mostly good reviews. But then it just kind of was dormant for a while. And then in 1974, there was a clerical error where they didn't since it didn't make a lot of money, they didn't really think much of the film, so they didn't renew the copyright. And because of that, in 1974, the film went into public domain, and then for about 20 years, all the TV stations and networks could play it for free. They didn't have to pay a license fee. And during those 20 years, during Christmas time and Thanksgiving, you'd always see that movie playing on the TV channels, various channels. And they played it so much because they didn't have to pay anything to play it. And so I think during those 20 years, from 74 to 94, it got a whole new generation of fans and viewers, and that's why it became such a classic over those years. And even today it is, because NBC ended up buying the copyright, I think eventually, and now it only plays a couple times, each year. But now with DVDs and streaming, a lot of the streaming networks actually have it available to either rent for $2.99 or you can watch it for free. So, it's a whole new generation, and I think still more and more people continue to learn about it and find out what a amazing film it is.
Yes, it's one of those movies that is truly a classic and will never be outdated. It is a human, heart-touching story, and first time I watched it, I laughed, I cry, still do. I watched it, and really made me think, what would the world be like if I wasn't born, or when people think, did I make a difference in this world? Do I make a difference in the world? And, I know I wonder that about myself. And it's really very thought-provoking movie too, and it's really a special movie, folks. If you have never watched it, you have to rent it, watch it, get it streamed or whatever. It's a Wonderful Life, and the book, It's a Wonderful Time. It's an awesome book, and I have to promote, Doug, because I cannot help myself, Your Mother of Normandy.
Yeah.
I love that story. And I'd like for you to tell about the Teddy Roosevelt Jr. monument or statue.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. And then before I do that, I'll just let people, if they do want to find out about the time travel, It's a Wonderful Time book, there's a website. The website address is HollywoodTimeTravel.com, HollywoodTimeTravel.com, and they can go on there and they can find out about the book, the audiobook, and, all that stuff, audiobook trailer and stuff. But regarding the Mother of Normandy, that's a movie. I did a documentary movie that I produced and directed back in 2010, and I did a coffee table book companion piece, and there's and I've been going to Normandy for the last 22 years for the D-Day anniversary, but during the COVID 2 years, I didn't get a chance to go, so I finally got to go this last June, and it was just an awesome time to see a lot of my friends and stuff. But one of the big things that happened this year is my friend Kathy Soroff and Kay Winiger, who are the presidents of Operation Democracy, which is a great organization that continues to, keep the tie between the French and Americans and the veterans and the families and stuff. It goes back to during the time of the Mother of Normandy, Madame Simone Renaud, what they did with the letters, sending letters back to the families. But they kind of revitalized that about 15 years ago. And Teddy Roosevelt Jr., who was the son of President Roosevelt, he was a brigadier general and landed on Utah Beach on the D-Day, on the morning of D-Day, June 6, 1944. And about 5 weeks later, he had a heart attack and he died, and he was put in this temporary cemetery in St. Mary-Glees for about 4 years. And then after 4 years, they repatriated a lot of those bodies. About, I think 40% came back to America, and about 60% stayed in French soil. But they moved them down to the Colville Cemetery, which is about maybe 30 or 45 miles south in Normandy down, and so there's it's where Omaha Beach is, and there's about 9,300 or 9,700 soldiers and airmen and all those guys buried there, sailors, and Teddy Roosevelt is buried there, and so he's still there today, and he won he was awarded the Medal of Honor for what he did on the morning of D-Day. But so he was also one of the founders of the American Legion magazine. So Kathy and Operation Democracy with the American Legion put up a lot of money, and they built they had a statue, a big life-size statue of Teddy Roosevelt, and they just put it up in June, and I was there. And General Milley, who's he's the Joint Chiefs of Staff for the Army and the Pentagon, he was there, and a lot of different generals and colonels and people, but they had a neat ceremony, and they unveiled that I think it was on June 6th at the Airborne Museum, and I was there, and it was really amazing to kind of see things come full circle from Teddy landing on the beaches, from back in June 6th, that's 78 years ago or so, and now a big statue to honor him for what he did, and so. Yeah, so that's kind of part of the story, and I'm going to redo I have a Mother of Normandy book, but I'm going to do a commemorative 80th anniversary commemorative version of that book and add some new things that have happened in the last 12 years, and so that statue ceremony will be definitely written about in the book. So that's a little update.
Wow. Oh, thank you. That's cool, and it's so fascinating to me, really, to hear you speak about your the process of doing an audio book and writing the book, and you're very talented, Doug. You're multi-talented, and you're a musician. You've been in Hollywood for a long time, and I would like to ask. I know they could go to your website, which I'm glad you said that because I was going to ask you that. And can they get your audio book at your website or Amazon? Which would you prefer?
Well, I think that the easiest would be to go to the website, HollywoodTimeTravel.com.
Okay.
As soon as you go there, right at the top on the left side is the new audiobook trailer that I just finished. Me and Elias put that together. And that gives you a good overview of what the film, the book / audiobook is about. And then right underneath there it says, you can buy the audiobook just by clicking a link, and that'll take you to a landing page of the various places that it's available on. Or if you're not into the audiobook and you just want the regular book, you click a link and it takes you to the Amazon page, where you can get the Kindle version or the ebook or the print version. I mean, the ebook and Kindle are the same basically, but the print version. So, the HollywoodTimeTravel.com is the best place to go for anything regarding that project, that book and audiobook. And then Mother of Normandy, that website is motherofnormandy.com. Pretty simple, and on there you can you can watch the trailer of that film, and you can buy the DVD of the film, or also the there's a coffee table book available. So, and that's Normandy with a Y, motherofnormandy.com. Yeah.
That is, folks. I can't. I mean, Doug was on back in I think April or May. That story, I'm telling you, got to read it. We have to remember our history. We have to remember and honor our war veterans who went over there and what they did for those Europeans. And, it's just, it gives me chills, really, because my uncle, he landed in Europe. My father was out in the Pacific, but my uncle was in Europe. And it's just incredible what these men did. That's why they're the greatest generation. And I also want to encourage people, you know what? In 2 weeks, it's Christmas. Next weekend is Hanukkah. I forgot when Kwanzaa is. Forgive me about that. I don't have that date. I can't remember everything. But this is a great gift. It's a wonderful time. It is a wonderful gift to give. And if you have a history buff in your family, they would love Mother of Normandy. I really recommend that. My husband would have loved your DVD and your book, Doug. My husband loved World War II history, and he would have loved it. Yeah, he really would have. And good. I want to thank you for coming on my show and for doing what you do, really for honoring the veterans. That's really very nice and awesome of you, and thank you.
It's an honor. It's an honor to know these guys and to honor them. I'm just very grateful, for what they did for us and our liberties and our freedoms. And you're right, we can't forget those things. So I'm just one little spoke in the wheel, but there's a lot of people out there that are making movies and books, writing books about them, so we don't forget.
That's right. And folks, this is why you need to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, because Doug was on back in April or May. You could go back and look. You could look up Mother of Normandy, or you could look up Chatting with Betsy, Doug Stubbleton, and you will see that interview. And not see it, you'll hear it. And it is incredible. I mean, I learned so much from you, Doug. And that story, because I never heard of that story. And I asked my mother, and she never heard of it. And so this is why these stories are so important. And this is one of the reasons why I love doing my show, because I love to hear people's stories. And, we learn from each other and the stories. I mean, this woman talking about making a ripple, she wrote to soldiers' families for over 40 years. I mean, that is a ripple, folks. And she probably didn't even think she was doing anything special, right? She just thought, she was so grateful, and she touched so many lives. That's cool.
Yeah. That's a great example. You're right, of what one person, what one person can do and affect other people's lives in a positive way. And she certainly did that, with her story, And I never heard of the story either. It was the first time for me on one of my trips. And once I heard about the story, I realized, wow, got to make this into a movie, and that's what we did. So, and now you guys can all enjoy it. Yeah, it's a great story.
Yes, and I really want to recommend for people to go on that the Mother Normandy website. And you also have interviews on there with veterans.
Let's see, I'm trying to think.
Or is that something else?
Yeah, on the website, I don't think. I mean, in the movie, there's definitely some veterans, some 82nd Airborne paratroopers were interviewed, and historians. But I don't think. I think what you're talking about is on. I do have a a YouTube channel.
That's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, that I don't do a lot with, but I think it's just Doug Stebleton. It's my name, S-T-E-B as in boy, L-E-T-O-N. And I did put a bunch of interviews, little 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I kind of split them up of different guys that were in the Air Corps and the Navy and the Army about World War II and D-Day. And those are all free to watch if somebody wants to go check those out. Yeah, that's on.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
YouTube channel. Yeah, those are all available for free. So certainly, check those out if you want to.
Got a little mixed up there, but folks,
that's okay.
you have to check out. I'm going to put it the link. It will be in the blog because these interviews are fascinating. And our WW2 vets are not many around anymore.
No.
They're in their upper 90s. My dad would have been 98. Yeah.
Wow.
But he died in 2012, and there's very few. I saw pictures the other day of Pearl Harbor survivors. There are like 101, 102. God bless them. So we have to remember what they did for us, and I really don't care if it offends anyone. That's just how I am. I'm very grateful for what they did.
In 2 years, next in June of 2024, it'll be the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and the guys that were 20 years old back in 44 will be 100 years old in 2 years.
Right.
So that gives you an idea. Yeah, so they're getting old.
Yeah.
Older. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Doug Stebleton, for coming on Chatting with Betsy. Always a pleasure. And if you want to come back in April, May for Mother of Normandy updates,
sure.
Please let me
also,
know.
We're writing, the Hollywood Time Travel Series is a book series. Book 1 is the It's Wonderful Time. So we're writing book 2 right now. So I think by maybe next June or July that book will be done. So I'll keep you posted on that one, and that's another fun story. So another time travel story. So part of the series. So
wow. So will your second book be different characters, or are you keeping the main character and they're going into another?
It's still Evan, West, and Coop. Those are the two time travelers, and they're on to other adventures. So you'll see. Yeah, that's the whole plan. Yeah. So that'll be next year.
Okay. Just for let people know, I have a little note here. Coop. He is a brilliant scientist in the book and a fellow time traveler who worked for Nikola Tesla in 1899.
Yeah, he worked for Nikola Tesla in 1899, and he went through a time warp in 1899 and ended up in 1944. And Evan went from 2021 back to 1946. And Coop had already been there 2 years, but they meet in 46 right after Evan gets there, and they find out. They find out they're both time travelers, and they have to work together to try to get out of there. So that's an interesting. He had to have a time travel buddy. It'd be a lot more. It's more interesting, with there's than just one person. So that's why we wrote that character in there.
Oh, great! Well, you're welcome to come back anytime, Doug. Anytime. Yeah. Well, thank you, and good luck with your audio book, folks. I would highly recommend it. I did hear some of the audio book, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And like I was just picturing that this they're in the studio by themselves, and just that was incredibly talented people that you picked out. So you have a good ear. Yes, you have a very good ear for talent. It's amazing.
Well, that's what I've done in the music business all these years, dealing with music.
Yes, that's true.
Recording. So I felt pretty comfortable, being part of the process. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot by doing it because it was my first audiobook. So, yeah.
Is your movie coming out, Doug?
Which one? Oh, the Big Life one. Yeah, no, it's not out yet.
Yes.
It's done. Yeah, it's called Big Life with Rich Little and Robert Davi. And, no, it's completely done. Yeah, Jay, who's the producer of that, he's right now, I think he's talking with Universal or one of the big studios to put it as a package or something. But, yeah, it's not out yet, but it's getting close.
Oh, okay, because my son and I go to the movies, so I was wondering if it was going to be out on the wide release.
I did see a good movie that you would like. It was called Devotion. I went to it a couple weeks ago, and it was about the Korean War, and it was really good. About two pilots, a black pilot and a white pilot, and one was their wingman. It was dealing with racism in the 50s and stuff, but they had to put that stuff aside to work together, and it was really good. So if you look at the movie, that's a good one.
My son saw that. We were supposed to see it, but it wasn't playing at a time, and his friends wanted to see it, so I said, that's okay. I'll catch it some other time. But yes, I got it
on streaming, whatever. It'll be on,
Good reviews. Well, thank you, Doug, and
thank you.
Happy holidays, and have a happy New Year.
All right, thanks again for the opportunity to come in and talk about the books. I appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Sure, you're welcome. You're welcome. Folks, if you want to subscribe, I am on iHeart, Amazon Music, Spreaker, Spotify. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who is the station manager, Passion World Talk Radio, who produces the show, writes the blog, information about Doug Stapleton, and where you can get the audio, purchase the audio book. It's a wonderful time. The travel series will be listed in the blog, and also about Mother of Normandy, which I highly recommend, and, of course, Doug Stapleton's YouTube channel. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, for making this all possible. I want to thank you, the audience, for listening and sharing, subscribing. Please share the show to help other people, and that's why I'm here, to provide a resource. I'd love to hear other people's stories. If you have a story and you want to share it with me, my email is Sloan, SLOAN, Betsy, BETSY 31 @gmail.com. And I also want to wish everyone a happy holiday season and a happy, blessed New Year. If it can't be happy, I hope it's peaceful. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, so please be kind, shine your light bright, because if we all did that, it would be a much brighter, happier world. And I want to encourage you also, in your area, watch It's a Wonderful Life. It's a wonderful movie. Watch it with your family. Get some popcorn, put a blanket on yourself, and just have a good old family time watching a classic, heart-touching movie. And I want to just thank everyone for listening. I really love doing what I do. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.